Hello viewers and welcome to yet another Warhammer 40,000 Conquest video production. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today we have Dan Jung playing against Federico. I believe we see Dan Diazra here playing Packmaster Kith, and we have Federico playing Urien Rakarth. So it's a Dark Eldar on Dark Eldar mirror match. I'm not tremendously familiar with these two warlords, but Kith certainly sees quite a bit of tournament play, so we'll have to see how things go. In regard to our planet layout, it looks like planet number 1 is going to be Iridial, which removes damage from units. Planet number 2 is Ossus 4, which steals resources. This is going to be very important, seeing as how both players are Dark Eldar. Both players are likely to be choke-oriented. Planet 3 is Barless. Discard cards at random. Yet another choke-oriented planet. Planet number 4 is Farron, which routes target non-warlords. And planet number 5 is Taurus, which is going to be critically important because this allows the player with fewer units, if they win a battle at that planet, to draw additional cards or resources. In regard to ending the game, this could end as early as planet number 3 if our players choose to go for strong point icons. Looks like Federico, our Rakarth player, is going to be keeping his initial hand. We've of course got 7 resources for both players. Urien has the advantage of starting with 1 additional card in hand. The initiative token is in Urien's hand, and he happens to reduce the cost of each Dark Eldar torture event by 1, and all non-torture events are increased by 1, so we're likely to see effects like Soul Seizure to allow Urien to retrieve cards from his opponent's graveyard. We're likely to see torture events that deal damage directly, like Searing Brand, all sorts of nasty effects like that. We happen to see Siren Zithlex at planet number 3 from Urien, and a Siren Zithlex at planet number 1 for Dan. This happens to cause any enemy units deployed at her planet to be exhausted. It's a formidable command unit. It costs 3, but it has 2 command icons. It's attacking for 2, so it's a very reasonable attacker, and it's certainly doing quite a bit in regard to winning command and ensuring that an opponent has difficulty winning command. We see a very choke-oriented card, the Murder of Razor Wings, touchdown at planet number 2, played by Federico. It causes a random card to be discarded from Dan's hand, and that happens to be a Warlock Destructor. So a very powerful combat unit that Federico seems overjoyed to see leave play. And at the present moment, it looks like things are set up favorably for Packmaster Kith as we see a Chimera Den put into his headquarters. So this is going to be action: exhaust the support to move any number of Chimera tokens to a target planet. And that is absolutely wretched for Urien to see, because say after Urien gets in an attack, Dan could trigger this action to move in any number of Chimera tokens and just absolutely obliterate whatever standing army our Urien player happens to have present. We see a Chaos Fanatics end up being played out to planet number 2, so it looks like currently Federico is winning command at planet 2 and 3, whereas Packmaster Kith only has command at the first planet at the moment. We still have 3 resources 4 cards for Kith, and 1 resource 5 cards for Urien. So certainly not a ton of resources to fund torture events, but there are quite a few units played out for our Urien player. It's all just going to come down to, is Kith going to be able to do the hyper-aggressive style of gameplay required to end up winning as early as planet number 3? In all likelihood, we end up seeing a Kith's Chimera Masters deployed to planet number 4. That's going to generate our very first Chimera token also at that planet, so that's going to be more command for Kith, and a Chimera token to relocate via Chimera Den, and of course Kith herself is going to be creating one. We see Federico's final resource used to fund a Void Pirate opposite that Chimera Masters, which is going to basically cancel out those command units, and as Dan passes, we see a promotion adhered to that Void Pirate, which is going to allow Federico to win 2 resources from the planet, 1 card from his Void Pirate, unless we happen to see Kith sent to contest that planet, which in all likelihood, seeing as how this Chimera Den is there, we could definitely see that. Urien is probably going to want to avoid any kind of direct combat. He's not going to be able to stand up very well at Iridial, so in regard to deployment, I would imagine Kith will go to planet number 4. I could see Urien go to, suppose he does go to planet number 1, he'll try to at least win command from the Siren there. Packmaster Kith is, of course, going to generate a Chimera token at her planet. Looks like she's going to go to planet number 2 just to try to clear out some of the opposition here. So it seems as if she's going to be going for that hyper-aggressive style of play. We see Urien pull in 4 cards and 2 resources, whereas Dan only pulls in a very middling 2 resources, but we'll have to see if this Chimera Den and this significant early game combat presence is going to end up potentially winning it for him. We're going to see a battle at the first planet. We're also going to see a battle at the second planet, and that's pretty much it. We've got Siren Zithlex opposite Urien Rakarth. They're both going to be able to swing for 2. Dan currently has 3 cards in hand compared to Federico's 7. There's certainly a number of different nasty torture events that Urien could try and use. Things like Searing Brand, I believe, might be able to help him against Siren Zithlex. One of the tricks about this commentary is if I don't know exactly what the players are playing before hopping into this game, I haven't had time to brush up on all my torture events here. So let's see what's in store from Federico in regard to actions. Okay, so we do see a Searing Brand. It's going to be 3 unpreventable damage to target non-Warlord unit at a planet with your Warlord. So this only costs 2. It is targeting Siren Zithlex. The opponent can choose and discard 2 cards in order to cancel that effect, but seeing as how he's only got 3 cards, that can be a tall order. We see an Incubus Warrior and Suffering both discarded, so that's a 2 shield card that's gone. It's a very powerful, hard-hitting attacker, which would have been able to potentially swing for 3 itself next round and win command. And then, of course, we see Urien retreat as opposed to trying to fight Siren Zithlex. So this is going to be a command victory. It is going to be a battle won by Siren Zithlex. I suppose the 2 units could have exchanged blows, but Urien would have left himself exposed as soon as he was exhausted for the Chimera Den to trigger, and then that would have been a ton of oncoming enemy attacks. And then, of course, as soon as the battle would have concluded, any damage Urien could have potentially done out would have been healed away by Iridial, so there were no wounded Kith controlled targets to heal with Iridial, but that's 1 planet icon of each type. At planet number 2, we see a Chimera token destroy the Murder of Razorwings. A Chimera token is being attacked for 1 by a Chaos Fanatics. Does Dan happen to have a shield? Let's see. We do see a second Coppery of Suffering, a 2 shield card used to preserve the life of this Chimera token. So once again, it seems as though Dan is definitely playing a hyper-aggressive game. Dan, just for reference, has been in a couple different videos of mine. He was the top 4 within the recent Germany 2015 National Championships, so both of these players are quite capable indeed, and it seems as though the planet layout is just heavily favoring Kith at the moment. At any point, we can see this Chimera Den trigger to relocate some of these Chimera tokens to any planet that Kith would like. I suppose planet currently number 3 would definitely make sense, just to ensure that those tokens end up there, because any units deployed to a planet happen to arrive exhausted, and we do indeed see that. So these Chimera tokens will be there, they'll be ready, just because anything deployed will be knelt by Siren Zithlex. So our headquarters phase starts. Dan is now up to 7 resources, 2 cards in hand, whereas Urien has 4 resources and 8 cards. Our new first planet is now Osis 4, and our new 5th planet is Eluith, which allows to search the top 3 cards of a deck for a card to add to hand, put the remaining 2 at the bottom of a player's library in any order. So, at the present moment, initiative lies in the hands of Dan. Federico still has Siren Zithlex here at planet number 3, which in all likelihood could be the final planet of the game. This Void Pirate that happens to be promoted is still gonna reel in a lot in an economical sense. We see a Bloodied Reavers played out at the planet number 1. So if Kith is sent to this planet, the Bloodied Reavers is going to be attacking for 4. Kith will happen to have initiative. She's got Siren Zithlex alongside her, but there's very, very few cards indeed in our Dark Eldar player's hand. We see Urien play out an Incubus Warrior at planet number 5, so that's going to be a 2-command unit. It's going to be another couple cards pulled in. It looks as though both players have now passed. We've got 7 resources for Dan, and we've got 0 resources, 6 cards for Urien. In regard to Urien's deployment, it could make sense for him to go to planet number 1 just to try to deal a little bit of damage to Kith, perhaps. Yeah, I suppose I'm not terribly surprised to not see that planet 1 play. Urien goes to planet number 4 to win command there, and win a battle. If he has fewer units, he'll get additional cards and resources, and we see Kith set up for planet number 2. So, he could relocate all of these Chimera tokens opposite the Bloodied Reavers, which seems like it would be a sound bit of strategy to try to win a battle at that planet. The initiative token is in his hands, and of course the Bloodied Reavers is only going to be attacking for 2 due to the lack of a Warlord there. So if he happened to draw some 2 shield cards, unless Federico happens to have just a ton of shields, he's going to be able to be, have a strong showing at that planet. I suppose we don't end up seeing an Archon's Terror or anything like that, which would have removed the Bloodied Reavers completely. I suppose there is still time for that occur. The Chimera Den only relocates 2 different Chimera tokens, which is in and of itself a little bit surprising perhaps, but as there's going to be a battle taking place at this second planet, Kith wants to leverage as much advantage in her favor as possible to kill off this opposing Siren Zithlex. We see a Visions of Agony played for 2, so that allows Federico the opportunity to look at the opponent's hand and choose and discard 1 card of his choice. And it looks as though Diazra is putting his cards on the table for our Urien player to choose from. It's 2 copies of Archon's Terror and a Clavex Warleader. So Federico chooses to get rid of the Clavex Warleader, a 3/3 ambush unit that destroys any target wounded army unit at its planet. Very, very nasty, but seeing as how we've got 2 different Archon's Terrors, that is absolutely horrific, because any kind of non-unique unit is immediately subject to being routed. So if he wants, he could get rid of this Bloodied Reavers straight away and win this planet essentially uncontested. Federico has to pay 3 for an Archon's Terror of his own. We see a Rakarth's Experimentations played for 0, thanks to the decreased cost of torture events, or I'm sorry, it's actually discarded as shields, as this Chimera token takes a swing at the Bloodied Reavers, so it now has 1 point of damage, and the Bloodied Reavers is going to be likely taking a swing against this ready Chimera token, unless we do see it routed. It looks like Dan passes on actions, and I guess just in regard to shields in his hand, we did see a copy of Raid, which is a 2 shield card, so certainly we could see that Raid discarded to preserve the life of this Chimera token. I can only imagine that's what's going to happen, and we do indeed see the Raid discarded, so the Chimera token takes no damage whatsoever. As soon as this battle is won, it's going to allow not only Dan to get 1 step closer to victory with the yet another strong point icon, but he'll also be able to steal 1 resource from his opponent Urien. It looks like as Urien is starting to lose all of his units, as there are so many tokens in play, he is likely going to have fewer units than his opponent, so he can reel in additional cards or resources based on how Taurus goes. But it seems as though this planet is going to be captured by Dan here. So he does steal 1 resource. We see his resource counter bounce up to 8. He's only got 2 cards in hand, however, so he is being effectively card choked out by his opponent. Federico did subtract 1 resource, so he's only got 2 resources, 8 cards. We see a Chimera token, the only ready Chimera token at planet number 2, take a swing at Siren Zithlex. Siren Zithlex does take 2 points of damage. We see no shield card used by that player. Siren, in response, takes a swing at the exhausted Chimera token, trying to deplete the army of those nasty little bastards so that they can't strategically be relocated via Chimera Den, perhaps. Siren Zithlex is destroyed by Packmaster Kith, however, and that allows Barlas to be triggered. And now this is setting up Urien into a very nasty position indeed, because our new first planet is going to have a ready Siren Zithlex sitting at it. And even though Federico is going to have quite a few resources, any units deployed to that planet are going to arrive exhausted, whereas, of course, all of these Chimera tokens, the 2 in the headquarters here, can arrive ready, and Packmaster Kith deployed to the first planet can generate a 3rd Chimera token, which will also be ready. And unless we happen to see something like a Kabbalite Strike Force, then there's no area effect option for Urien, and seeing as how that unit itself isn't very popular, I don't imagine we're ultimately going to see it. The headquarters phase triggers. We now see 12 resources for Diazra. We see 9 resources for Federico, 4 cards for Kith, and 9 cards for Urien. Karnath is our new 5th planet, but is that really going to matter? At this point, the earliest that Urien could win the game would be through red icons, and that would be at our new planet number 5. We see Federico's first action be a Visions of Agony. Very good play here. This is played out for only 2, and he's going to be able to pick and choose any 1 card to get rid of from Dan's hand. He has 2 copies of Archon's Terror, a Void Pirate, and a Promotion. I imagine he's going to be getting rid of one of these copies of Archon's Terror, but let's see what he ultimately chooses to do. He does remove an Archon's Terror, so even if Urien were to pay, a tremendous chunk of resources for some sort of hideous elite, a single Archon's Terror for the cost of 2 could remove that from what is, in all likelihood, going to be the final battle of the game. It looked like the previous round, I believe that Urien chose to trigger resources from Taurus. We see a Void Pirate played out opposite this Incubus Warrior. Predictably, I can only imagine that we're going to also see a Promotion played out, and we see an Archon's Palace played by Urien. So this allows when an opponent wins a command struggle, that support can be exhausted to cancel the card or resource bonus of that planet. That does happen to also negate the triggers of things like Void Pirates, so even though Dan is going to be winning command at this planet, I can only imagine we're going to see Archon's Palace triggered to prevent Dan from drawing 3 cards. We see a Twisted Rax played out at the very first planet. It of course arrives exhausted, but a torture card can be discarded from Urien's hand in order to ready that unit, which can attack for 3. So that's definitely a fantastic card to see at this point in the game. It's only a 2-copy signature army unit, but seeing as how Urien has initiative, that could be absolutely fantastic played out for him. And if memory serves, this only remaining card in Diazra's hand does happen to be an Archon's Terror, which can unfortunately remove that Twisted Rax from play. So it's a valiant effort, I believe, on Federico's part, but it's ultimately going to be in vain. Seeing as how there's such a huge card discrepancy between both players, Federico has 6 cards in hand. He's going to be winning a little bit of command himself. It's possible that he could maybe have drawn into a bunch of shield cards, a bunch of torture events to discard, so that the Twisted Rax could have absolutely obliterated most of their opposition. But ultimately, it's probably going to come down to that Archon's Terror is just too much. Looks like Federico chooses to play an Incubus Warrior. He's not exactly sure where he wants to send it. He ultimately does settle on Karnath, so he invests 2 resources and a card into this chance that he'll draw probably a more useful card. So I think that might just go to indicate that there's not a tremendous showing in his hand. This is kind of curious, though, because this is quite a few very capable combat units that are being played out. by Federico. This Slith Mercenaries touches down. Federico's now used up all of his resources. Dan happens to have 11 resources. It seems as though it would make sense if he were to perhaps purchase this Slith Mercenaries, just because, you know, as soon as, I suppose, if he could manage to reel in any cards at all, that would definitely help this Archon's Palace. Like, for example, if he were to purchase those Slith Mercenaries, then he could win card bonus at least at one of these 2 planets, because we do see both players quite clearly go to planet number 1. So I believe that was kind of a mistake on Dan's part. He could have at least ensured that he was pulling in 2 cards from Barlas, even if the 3 cards here would have been negated. And that's going to be quite a bit of command 1, of course, by our Urien player. So it just seems as though that was somewhat unnecessary, but oh well. In regard to income, we're going to see 4 cards and 3 resources for Urien, so he's still got 3 resources, 8 cards. Dan only has 11 resources and 1 card, which of course is an Archon's Terror. He's got 2 strong point icons at the moment. All he has to do is get rid of this Twisted Rax and then beat the snot out of Urien Rakarth, and then as soon as that Dark Eldar unit happens to be removed from the planet, that's pretty much good game here. Kith, of course, generated an additional Chimera token when she touched down at the first planet. That token attacks the Twisted Rax. Kind of a curious play here. I guess Dan is just being ultra conservative with his cards in hand. We see a Searing Brand that's going to be 3 unpreventable damage to a target non-Warlord unit. Under normal circumstances, Dan could choose and discard 2 cards to get rid of that effect, but we don't end up seeing that option available to him, so that Siren ends up being absolutely just destroyed. And then we see a Chimera token take a swing at Urien Rakarth, so kind of an interesting choice here. Urien ends up taking 2 points of damage. We still have 7 cards in Federico's hand. It's now his opportunity to, I suppose, play actions. After that attack, Federico has no actions whatsoever. Kith now attacks, takes a swing at Urien, and we see 2 more points of damage added onto Urien. So at this point, all of our units are ready. I can't imagine we're going to be seeing a retreat from Urien or Kith, because the game is on the line here. This is kind of stressful, I guess. I don't know why that Archon's Terror wasn't played earlier. We don't see any action from Federico. Is Dan going to... He does now choose to play as Archon's Terror. I'm not sure why this didn't come earlier, but we see that Twisted Rax removed from the planet, immediately routed, and we still have 9 resources with absolutely nothing to play them on. We, of course, see a Chimera token be destroyed. A Chimera takes a swing at Urien in return. And do we have any shield cards whatsoever? What does Federico have in his hand? He has 7 different cards. This is everything on the line if Urien is bloodied. Well, it looks like Federico calls out GG. Urien is going to be taking 2 points of damage from that Chimera token. It looks as if Urien is bloodied. He's immediately placed in his headquarters, exhausted, and that is going to allow Diazra. Dan Jung is going to capture our 3rd planet. A very short game, a very aggressive game. It seems as though Dan says, if I'd have known you were going to play Urien, I'd have chosen something a little bit less powerful, a little bit less competitive. That first turn Chimera Den definitely was not doing any favors for our Urien player, but once again, thank you all very much for watching. As ever, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not already done so. Or if you are already subscribed, you're encouraged to share this content, as the more viewers there are that stumble upon these videos, the more viewers that might like what they see and then ultimately buy into Conquest and join our community. And of course, each additional new player, each additional new dollar sent toward Fantasy Flight Games helps support this game, this product that we know and love, and helps keep our community healthy and alive. So, if you'd like to keep in touch with me, feel free to reach out and contact me through Twitter or Facebook, and as ever, if you'd like to help me with some of my file hosting and operating expenses, I'd be honored were you to visit my Patreon. So once again, I'll just conclude this video by saying thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you'd like to be involved in videos of your own, feel free to get in touch, but until next time, be sure to check back in again soon for ever more Conquest LCG content to come.